All right, welcome everybody. Tonight's class is sponsored by Liz Thompson. So I want to thank her very much for that and all of her support. And it should only be good for her and for all of us. And tonight's class, very appropriately, I think, is about women and mitzvot, because it is the subject today is going to be Bat Mitzvah. And whether it should be done at all, whether how it should be done, those sorts of things are on the table, so to speak. But before we do that, I really wanted to avoid this subject. Nobody even noticed. I kind of like slid right past it. We already talked about, this is the Jewish life cycle class. So we talked about haircuts, and we talked about, we talked about the 3-year-olds, and we talked about 8-day-old and a 1-month-old, but we never talked about the birthday. And there's actually a few reasons why we didn't talk about the birthdays, because I'm frankly a little bit concerned and confused about the Jewish perspective about birthdays. There's very, very huge gap, a huge spectrum of opinions about birthdays and celebration of birthdays. So I wanted to skip the subject altogether anyway. But as you'll see, birthdays kind of fall into the subject in a strange way. When we get to it, you'll see why we talked about birthdays today at all. But we need to discuss it. So you twisted my arm. I'll give you the 3 major opinions about birthdays, and all of them are based in Torah. So you have what to rely on if you want to make a birthday, or if you don't want to make a birthday, you have what to rely on. So I've always been taught, since yeshiva, I've always been taught the Jews don't celebrate birthdays. We don't. Obviously, I grew up in a secular Russian family, and a birthday is a big deal. And part of the reason why it's a big deal is because in a secular world, you need to find things to celebrate. You have nothing else. You have no Torah to celebrate. You have no Hashem to celebrate. You have no spiritual, real holidays to celebrate. So you make up holidays. Much like the holiday that's coming up in the rest of the world, we're still in the holiday season, even though our holiday is over. So if you don't have something to celebrate, you make up something to celebrate. So a birthday is something made up. That's what I've always been taught, and that made a lot of sense to me. The people of old didn't even know their birthdays. Didn't even know when their birthday was, which is why very often, like when you have like ancient, you want to find the biography of a famous person, the Chafetz Chaim or something like that. Yeah, you look up what year they were born, and there's a question mark after the year, because we were not really sure when they were born. We certainly don't know what date they were born, unless they were born on a Shabbat or they were born on a holiday. Very often, a lot of tzaddikim, we don't even know what day they were born. And yes, some people we do know when they were born. We know that, for instance, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was Zayin Adar. That's his birthday. That's also his yard site. And we say that there's a connection between the birthday and the yard site. But in general, birthdays were not very celebrated. And when they were often, if they were celebrated, excuse me, they were celebrated on like special days. What I mean by like special days, special birthdays, not just like every birthday, but maybe the 60th birthday, maybe the 70th birthday. We'll see some sources about that, God willing. But really, different people, including the Munkacher Rebbe and many other great Gedolim, wrote about this, and they said, the Gemara in Eruvin tells us that our day of birth is sort of a sad day. Our neshama didn't want to get born, and we talked about that in the introduction to this class series. That really life, ideally would not even be lived. Ideally, we should all just be souls basking in the glory of the Shekhinah in the other worlds, right? But we're born. So what are you celebrating? Why are you making a party out of it? Why are you, so that's one extreme example. I'll give you the other extreme, even though we should kind of go in order I'm gonna go against common wisdom here and go to the other extreme first. The other extreme is a birthday is an amazing thing. A birthday is a holy thing. It's the day of tefillah. There's a story about the Chafetz Chaim that he told somebody that your prayers can be more easily accepted on your birthday. There's all kinds of sources that say that it's including let's see. I know I had some sources written down here, but sorry, I can't find it right now. But oh yeah, the Chashuke Chemed was asked a halachic question about somebody needed to have surgery done, and their surgery was around their birthday, and wanted to know if they should do that. And he said, you should specifically have your surgery on your birthday. Your birthday is a Yom Segula for you. It's a special day. Obviously, Hashem chose for you to be born on a specific day for a specific reason, and so you should celebrate that. So, that's the other opinion. That's way to the other extreme. So from a birthday is a nothing to a birthday is a Yom Segula. So there's an in-between opinion, and that is you should be happy on your birthday because you should be happy every day. And you should realize that you should take stock and think about your last year, just like you do every Rosh Hashanah, and think about the fact that Hashem could have taken you. You're only alive by Hashem's mercy. I don't know about you, but who knows what I deserve? And here I am. I'm alive. I'm speaking. It should be a reason to celebrate. And again, that should be done every day anyway, right? Every day is a day to celebrate. That's why we say Modim, why we wake up with Moda'ani. True, but your birthday is a special day just for you, because obviously you were born on a specific day that has to do with your mazel, right? Some people are born under Mars and have more influence they say more of a pull towards blood and guts, whether that means through violence or whether that means they might be doctors and healers.
Do we have anything else on that? Because every time it's always Mars. Like, is there any other planet that like
every
means
other
something?
planet? Yes. Yes. Very good. Yeah, that's the easy example. But yes, every single one of the this isn't really the class for to talk about the whatchamacallums, the planets and the stars, but yeah, certainly the constellations and such. Yes, every single month has a certain pull. So and it's worth talking about. Maybe it would be a good Rosh Chodesh program idea for you to start when you come back here and start Rosh Chodesh programs. All right.
nice hints. Always.
I don't let up. So okay. So that's the. But yeah, every single month has an influence. Of course, Nisan has the influence of freedom from So the whole idea of why that month was chosen. That month was chosen years and years before the incident of the Exodus from Egypt. Hashem knew that would be the month for that, and so Shvat is the time for rebirth. With so all of these months have different influences for sure. Okay, but anyway, but your particular birthday, you were born on for a reason. I like to I like to do research about my birthday every once in a while to see whose yard sites are on my birthday. Almost all the famous people I know whose yard site are on my birthday were people who were born after I was born, right? So so it's not like I'm sharing their neshama or anything, but there's certain certain things that I gravitate towards the Torah of, say, for instance, Rav Shach, whose yard site was on my birthday, or Shlomo Karlbach, whose yard site's on my birthday. So that's everybody has something like that. You should look into your birthday and see what other famous people or what else was happened on that particular day. You might be surprised that there's some sort of correlation. All right. Anyway, that's birthday. The reason we'll see later on why we bring it up. Again, like I said, the huge huge gap, right? There's between different opinions. The Mooncatcher, Rav Elio Lopian and Lev Eliyahu writes about how tefillah, it's a Yom Tefillah, a birthday, right, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of different opinions about that. So now let's get to our main topic, and then when we get back to birthdays, you'll know why we started off with that. Okay, well, it's not an accident. So the Bat Mitzvah is somewhat a controversial issue, and there are also a great scope of opinions about whether it should be celebrated at all and how it should be celebrated. So let's start off with the opinion that we'll start out slow. Okay, we'll make so this makes more sense. A bat mitzvah is the female version of a bar mitzvah. Okay, more or less. So before we even talk about bat mitzvah, we need to know what a bar mitzvah is. Now, I know I specifically said this is not bat mitzvah class, so we're not going to talk too much about bar mitzvahs, but we need to at least know what they are. So the Talmud, certain sources, including the Midrash and the Zohar, say even the Torah mentions a bar mitzvah. Where is there a mention of a bar mitzvah? So we know that Abraham made a giant party, a big Suda for Yitzchak, Yom Shegamal, the day that we usually translate it as the day that he was nursed. But the day he was weaned, I guess actually stop being nursed, I should say. So the Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah in Vayera 52:14 says that the reason that actually the reason for the Suda was the reason for this party was because that was the day that Yitzchak was no longer in the throes of the Yetzer Hara. He was no longer under complete control of the Yetzer Hara. Meaning it was the day that, says the Matnat Kahuna, it was the day that he gained the Yetzer Tov. In other words, one of the things we say about a bar or bat mitzvah is that it is the day when a child becomes an adult, and the way that a person becomes an adult is that they're able to become completely selfless. Right? The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, isn't just evil. There's a lot of good that it can cause if we use it right, but it is all selfish pleasures, selfish desires, selfish needs, and we don't think outside of the circle of our own heads. We don't really think about other people so much, except for how much we can gain from their pleasure, for instance. Right? If we want to make our friend happy, we want to make our mothers or fathers happy. When we do that, we're actually really just giving ourselves pleasure because we want to see that smile. We want to get that thank you. We want to give a nice present to our friend because when our birthday comes, we'll get a nice present back. Right? Something like that. So everything we do when we're a child is selfish. And of course, it's the parent's job, and we talked about that in the previous classes. It's the parent's job to train the child to be more and more selfless, more and more often. So that when the Yetzer Tov, when the good inclination enters the body, at that point, whether it's a boy, bar mitzvah, or a girl, bat mitzvah, at that point, the child now is able to think way outside themselves and think more about the neighbors, other people, giving gifts, making nice gestures to people who will not repay them, who they will not get anything from. Giving tzedakah anonymously to a cause that they won't benefit from. You know, if say some millionaire somewhere who already has an established community decides to give us $5 million to build a building, they're not benefiting at all from that if they do it anonymously, and they're getting the real mitzvah because they're actually they're actually doing a chesed shel emet, complete chesed, no strings attached. So that's selflessness. And that begins at bar or bat mitzvah. For a girl when she's 12, and for a boy when he's 13, approximately. There are certain physical signs we're not going to talk about in this class. But when we say bar or bat mitzvah for the purposes of this class, we're going to say 12 years old for a girl, 13 years old for a boy. Why is there a difference? The main difference is because women mature faster than men. Okay? Sometimes way more, a lot faster, and sometimes just a little bit faster, but they certainly mature physically, and they certainly mature mentally, and they certainly mature psychologically, and they have much more intense conversations on much deeper topics at a much younger age than a boy would ordinarily. Now, of course, there are exceptions to all this, no doubt. But we don't run on exceptions. Exceptions prove the rule. We go by the general populace, and then generally speaking, that's true. We will at some point probably have to discuss that there are other groups of Jews nowadays who have bar and bat mitzvah at the same year, at 13. And we should probably discuss whether or not that's appropriate. Hopefully we'll get to that. Okay. Now, the boys' bar mitzvah celebration, as I said, is mentioned already in the Torah, at least if under that commentary of the Matnat Kahuna on the Midrash, learning about the party that Abraham made for Yitzchak. So if that party was a bar mitzvah party, okay, great, bar mitzvah party. For sure, that's an opinion. There are definitely other mentions of bar mitzvahs in the Talmud. There's a story told in the Gemara in Kiddushin, I believe. My source. Yeah, there's a Gemara in Kiddushin 31a that Rav Yosef made a party when he realized that he was completely obligated in mitzvot, which is what bar mitzvah should mean. That's why the word mitzvah is in the word bar mitzvah. It's not because there's a bar and we do a few mitzvot. That's not the idea. A bar mitzvah means a master, a son of mitzvot, somebody who's obligated in all the mitzvot. Now, we know, and we've talked about this before, that nobody can do all 613 mitzvot. But the mitzvot that are obligated on a man, putting on tefillin, praying 3 times a day, reading the Torah, learning Torah, all of those mitzvot are obligated on a person, on a man, when he turns 13. And all of the mitzvot of a girl become incumbent upon the girl when she turns 12. Okay? That being said, the question becomes, if girls should celebrate this idea just like a boy should celebrate the idea of being obligated in all these mitzvot, such a happy day. We're so happy that we have all these mitzvot. I want to make a party about it. So if a girl should do it or not is a question for the poskim, for the rabbis. And so it has been written about in Ashkenazic poskim, Sephardic poskim, etc.
Rabbi, excuse me,
Yeah.
Can you enumerate the girls' mitzvahs? Please.
All of them?
A few.
How much
Basic.
time you got? So, okay. So first of all, women are obligated in all of the mitzvot the boys are obligated to do, unless they are time bound, except with some exceptions, by the way. So, for example, tzitzit need to be worn during the daytime when you can see them. And so because women, first of all, did not wear that kind of clothing, and so they didn't need to put tzitzit on their 4-cornered ponchos, right? Because they didn't used to wear them. So they're exempt from that, but they had to keep kosher, they had to keep Shabbat, they had to keep pray according to most opinions, at least once a day, perhaps twice a day. What that means is maybe a little bit different, but yeah, almost every obligation that a man has, a woman has. Tzniut, definitely staying away from the opposite gender in terms of sexual behavior, etc. So they're obligated in almost everything men are obligated in, minus the time-bound commandments. Again, with some exceptions. Some of the exceptions are, for example, shofar, right? Really, a woman shouldn't have to hear the shofar because it's a time-bound commandment. If you listen to it at night, no man has fulfilled his obligation by hearing the shofar at night. If he hears it the day before Rosh Hashanah or hears it 2 days after Rosh Hashanah, he has not fulfilled his obligation, right? So to a woman, is technically not obligated then to hear the shofar because it is a time-bound commandment. But nevertheless, women of our ancient, our foremothers of old, right, a long time ago, took on upon themselves the obligation to hear shofar, and so then therefore it has become the custom that women do listen to the shofar and have taken on that commandment. Kiddush, Friday night, women are obligated to as much as men, right? Which brings up a whole host of halachic issues. If a man already prayed, which he should have done anyway, and he said Kiddush in the prayer, right, in the Shemona Esrei of Friday night, then now he's already technically fulfilled his obligation, and his wife has not. So now really his wife has a bigger obligation to say Kiddush at night than he does. So how did they equal that back up? How do they make it so that he can say Kiddush for her? And that is by him saying Shabbat Shalom to her. And when she answers back Shabbat Shalom, she's basically accepted upon herself Shabbat. She's basically said Kiddush. When you say Shabbat Shalom, you're making Kiddush. Those 2 words are enough really for Kiddush. So by doing that, now the man can make Kiddush for his wife. All right. Anyway, like I said, how much time do you have?
Thank you.
a lot of mitzvot, Baruch Hashem. But some of these are, but that's really what a Bat Mitzvah celebration and a Bar Mitzvah celebration should be, is how happy we are to accept all of these mitzvot upon us. So that's just part of it. Okay. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein comes down pretty hard against Bat Mitzvahs. But before I tell you that, it's too late. I told you that. Before you think, he's just probably saying that because he's male, obviously, so he's got the male opinion and he doesn't like Bat Mitzvahs. So before we say that, I wanna basically paraphrase something he wrote about Bar Mitzvahs also. I know it's not a Bar Mitzvah class, but you're gonna like this. He said that if it were in his power to, he would nullify the mitzvah he would nullify all bar mitzvahs. He would not allow any congregation, any youngster from celebrating a bar mitzvah, not bat mitzvah. Why? You have to understand the time he was writing in. In the time that he was writing, back in the 1950s when he wrote this, what was happening was a lot of people had bar mitzvahs, but if you've ever seen, some of these movies about Jewish life, Jewish conservative reform life in the 1950s, you'll know bar mitzvahs were just a party that had some religiosity in it, some like token putting on a talit, reading from the Torah, taking pictures. Everybody drove to shul. Right? There was very little actual Judaism in a bar mitzvah. Certainly no acceptance of mitzvot, right? There was all kinds of speeches about today I am a man or something like that, but no real now I'm obligated. Now I have the chiyuv of praying, of leading benching, of these sorts of things. Yes, they probably made the Birkat Hamazon on a giant challah that barely fit into the room, I don't know if they washed beforehand. I don't know if they've ever said hamotzi before. I don't know if they said birkatim. I don't know if they benched afterwards. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, in Rav Moshe's time, bar mitzvahs were not holy affairs. I don't know how much better we are nowadays. We have bar mitzvahs that are Baruch Hashem. The boy lanes, the boy gives the Devar Torah. Okay, but there's also bar mitzvahs where most of the event is the next day, when you have this huge huge party with DJs and lights and cameras and action and boys and girls dancing together and all kinds of other things that are definitely not within the spirit of a boy accepting upon himself the yoke of Torah and mitzvot, right? So that's why Rav Moshe was pretty harsh about bar mitzvahs. About a bat mitzvah, he was even you could say equally strong, because what he says about a bat mitzvah is that, what are we celebrating? We're celebrating a girl who is now accepting upon herself mitzvot. Almost none of those mitzvot are public mitzvot. In other words, okay, now we have another bat mitzvah girl in our community. Are we going to call her on the phone at 6:20 in the morning when we don't have a minyan? No. The bar mitzvah boy, though, and we've done this before. If somebody's bar mitzvah and we need help with a minyan, we'll call his mother and ask him to drive him over, and she'll do it. But we won't. So what are we celebrating when we celebrate a bat mitzvah? So he had several things to say about it in many different teshuvot. I'm not going to quote you all of them, but Orach Chaim 104 is probably the most famous one, where he writes about, like I said, bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah. He says, first of all, a bat mitzvah can be celebrated privately, whether it's with family, with friends. The whole community doesn't need to know about it, right? We want the girl to realize what the event is. The event is her taking on mitzvot. And so he said it should not be a sudat mitzvah, right? It should not be, it doesn't have to be on Shabbat. It could be any day of the week. Most people do it on Sunday, to be honest. We've done the 3 bat mitzvahs that we've made. We're all on Sundays when people could come. Actually, I take that back. Forgot one of them we made on Sukkot time, just because that's when family could come. By the way, he also wrote, we have to talk about how that fits with our shul, that the bat mitzvah should not be in a shul. It can be in a social hall, but it should not be in a shul. It should not seem as though we're introducing her into the rabbinate kind of thing, which is one of the problems of the bat mitzvah. We probably should have said that before. The Tzitz Eliezer and many other poskim, and Rav Moshe mentions this as well, mentions 2 major problems with celebrating a bat mitzvah. Let's go back a bit. Sorry. 2 major problems. One problem is pritzut. That's pritzut will just translate as not being tzniut, right? So it's a very public affair. We're putting the girl in the limelight and everything else, and that's related to this next idea of bichukotai lo telechu, and we've talked about this concept in other classes before as well, and that is we don't do rituals of other religions or other groups. And the bat mitzvah, Reb Moshe and others held, was not a Jewish practice in its core. We don't, like we said, we don't have any bat mitzvahs in the Torah. We don't have any bat mitzvahs in the Gemara. We don't have any bat mitzvahs of the Rishonim. Right? We don't. There's no mention of them. So, like, where do they pop up from? So, some people want to say that it started with the Reform movement, and other people, and this might not be so different, really, would say that it started from the kinds of, I just forgot, just had a brain drain here. What are they called? There's parties. You probably know better. When a girl turns 17,
Quinceañera?
no, that's the
Quinceañera?
quinceañera
That's
is a Spanish one. It's true, but there's an American thing, especially in the
Sweet
South.
16?
What?
A sweet 16?
No. There's a name for a party when women were sort of like a young girl was sort of introduced to society. Basically, I forgot what it's called. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Let me see if Google knows. Party where girl is introduced into society. Probably a bad thing to Google.
Here's a summary from
Ah,
Wikipedia.
there you go. Thank you. Debutante. A debutante ball. Right? So sorry. Yay, Google. All right. So
I'm sorry, what? I've never heard of this.
you never heard of a debutante ball?
No, it
It's
sounds like a graduation excuse.
All right, so you might have been saved from this, but especially maybe some of our older listeners can tell us more about it. I've never been to one, but debut, maybe you've heard, maybe you've heard of it as referred to as a
Wait, a
debut.
debut was debutante?
Yeah, debut is short for debutante.
What?
Debut is short for in this situation. A debut is short for debutante. A debutante ball was when a girl was basically ready to start dating, so they made a big ball, a big party for her. Like it was very popular, especially like in the American South, where you'd make this big party and you'd invite all the single guys, and you dress her up and she has to show off her skills, her dancing skills, her musical skills, her singing. So it was basically like a whole like Miss America pageant just for one girl, and the wealthier families would make a bigger deal about it. So in a sense, the bat mitzvah is sort of like that, which is, I don't know if this is true. My theory is that maybe that's part of the reason why it became popular when the girl was older, not 12, but at 13. That's closer to the 16, 17-year-old debutante ball. Anyway, whatever the case may be, that's not what a bat mitzvah is supposed to be at all. Like not even close, like miles apart. A bat mitzvah is supposed to be about the girl accepting mitzvot, and it's supposed to be tznuah and everything else. So a lot of the older poskim were very much against debutante balls, because the main thing you're doing, really, when you think about it, is you're showing her off in a way that's not very modest at all, and does not encourage the kind of humility that we want Jewish girls and Jewish boys to have. So with that said, that was part of the sort of like the frustration of the early sorry, I'm being attacked by a fly here. That was one of the frustrations of the early rabbis when it came to the bat mitzvah, especially in America. It did not seem to be even an event in Europe. Yeah, you don't hear much writing about bat mitzvahs or even bar mitzvahs for that matter. We'll talk about that next week, God willing. But certainly, bat mitzvahs were a very rare occurrence, if they happen at all. And I looked through some of the collections I have of older historical documents, some of the diaries and such, and I can't find a single older reference to a bat mitzvah celebration older than like say 100 years ago. So it's interesting. Not even in the Reform movement. So I'm rather confident in saying at this point anyway that it was probably when the bat mitzvah started really to take shape in American life. It was really sort of a Jewish version of the debutante ball or the debut.
Rabbi Eddie, can you hear
Yes.
me? Yeah, okay.
Perfectly, like you're right here.
What you were talking about was the quinceañera that the Hispanic community does when a girl is 15 years old.
Correct.
That's
that
what
too.
you were thinking of before.
That too, yes, the quinceañera, but I was also thinking about the debutante ball,
Oh, I
Oh,
remember those.
You remember? Oh, see, I told you. Right.
I'm
So
as
yeah.
old as the hills. I remember those.
Yeah. They're probably. Did they have them over in the north also, or just in the south?
Oh, yeah. No, in the north,
Ohio had some.
New York.
New York, yeah.
New York had them. They had these fancy cotillions where you were coming out to society.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was usually girls whose fathers were corporate executives.
Wealthier, right?
Yeah, the upper echelon, or so they thought.
or could pretend to be. Right. So yeah. So exactly what I was saying. Yeah. So it was a huge party, lots of money spent, big dazzling gala event, and it was a big deal. And that is probably one of the influences for the bat mitzvah, which is why the rabbis were so against it. We don't want to follow in their customs, especially if their customs have some sort of inappropriateness, which is really at the core base of a debutante ball. There's something inappropriate, right? It's all about like introducing this girl for marriage and to see how talented she is, so that a good suitor would get her. So yeah, well, I'm not going to judge right now, but that seems to be where it came from. All right. So based on that, finally got this fly. Yeah. All right. Something to celebrate. There you go. All right. So sponsor Kiddush. Okay. So so that's why Igrot Moshe writes that it should not be a Sudat mitzvah, and it should not be at a shul. It could be in the social hall of a shul, he said, but should not be in the shul proper. Now, unless other poskim write, and Rav Moshe also writes this, unless the shul is built in such a way that it doesn't have a social hall, like our shul, right? We don't have a social hall, so where else are you going to have where else are you going to make the kiddush? Where else are you going to make the lunch? And of course, it's going to be in shul. So therefore, it's fine. He also would recommend it be a kiddush, not a full meal, and that doesn't count. That doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be one event. So you can make a kiddush in shul. You can make a kiddush in shul to tell people, my daughter is bat mitzvah. We're so happy. We're so proud of her, et cetera, et cetera. She can give a speech. He, by the way, where Moshe wrote, not at the bima, again, because we don't want to make it seem like we're trying to prepare her for the rabbinate, right? She can make the speech. She can make the speech at the table. She can make the speech wherever. She should make a speech. She should give a Devar Torah, because that's what a bat mitzvah is about. It's about her accepting mitzvot, including the learning of Torah, which girls should do as well. However, they should not give the speech up there at the bima. And the Sridei Eish writes, and he agrees, etc. Now, that's one opinion about bat mitzvahs. But now we're going to go to the Sephardic opinion.
Wait, sorry. What about let's say our shul is like a shul and a social hall. Is that better?
So actually, in a lot of ways, it's not at all better. It's worse. We should not be eating in shul. I shouldn't be drinking this coffee in a shul.
No, but we learn here.
Yeah,
We learned it,
exactly. So this our shul, because it's so small, because we don't have a social hall, not yet. Therefore, we didn't get our $5 million yet. But when we do, we can have a social hall. All right. But meanwhile, the status of our shul, and I've spoken about this in other contexts as well. The status of our shul is what's called a Beit Midrash, because we study here, because we have nowhere else to eat our Suda, right? So therefore, we can eat here under certain conditions. We shouldn't just like make a picnic here just for no reason. If it's a luncheon or a Hanukkah party, etc., for sure we can eat that here. The Pesach Seder, right? So whatever other events we'll be able to have this year, we'll see. But that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, but the Bat Mitzvah Suda, we're not talking about the Bar Mitzvah Suda. The Bat Mitzvah Suda is not a Suda. So it should be just be a Kiddush. It should not be in the shul, et cetera, unless you have to. And then, but the other part of it, where you invite her friends and her family, that could be at home, that could be privately, that could be a suda. You can make a meal out of it, but it doesn't have to be a sudat mitzvah. Certainly should not be a great big shebang. Should not look anything like a debutante ball.
And is it only for women and girls to attend?
So most of the poskim say that's ideal. Yes. The bat mitzvahs that we've made for our girls were just for female friends and just for women of the community, and only when it comes to family were there men involved. Like I was there, I was mostly taking pictures or whatever, serving food, but whatever it is. But
Yeah, because for my son, for our granddaughters, he played the music, but he was behind the screen.
exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
exactly like that. That's the ideal. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So just in case you were under the impression that this age of 12 is sort of like a random number, it has nothing to do with reality. The Gemara in at least two places talks about how a girl who's bat mitzvah specifically has a new status in a lot of ways. For example, the Gemara in Tamura, very beginning, and Tamura 2b, it says that somebody who's just before bat mitzvah is already able to make shavuot. In other words, is already able to make promises and legally accept upon themselves certain responsibilities. The Gemara Nida 45b says basically the same thing, right? So it's a very important legal thing. It's not just, she has all these mitzvot to do. No, she has the mental capacity to do it. She has the strength, psychological wherewithal to do the mitzvot. The mitzvot are not just a random series of rituals. They're supposed to mean something. And when you're at that age, you can finally think about it and make the and have the right kind of behaviors when you're doing it.
So does it release the parents from their responsibility?
Oh, great question. So Baruch Sheptarani.
Full of questions.
No, it's a great question. So it's an interesting thing. I am not completely prepared to discuss it right now because it's part of the bar mitzvah class, but we should mention that there is a blessing that the father says when the boy has his bar mitzvah, right? When he gets called up to the Torah, the father is supposed to say a bracha, Baruch Sheptarani. Thank you, Hashem, for excusing me from my responsibilities to this boy. I'm no longer responsible to him, whatever that means, right? Obviously, the boy's he's still paying for the bar mitzvah, right? the rabbi's thinking to himself, he's still gonna pay the bill, right?
And the education.
and he's probably gonna still,
Right.
the boy's probably still gonna have some clothes, and he's gonna probably eat every once in a while, So so it doesn't totally excuse the parents from all responsibility. It's worth discussing, and we probably will next week. What exactly does it mean that they're excused, or that they're being excused from responsibility? But what we should discuss now is that we do not make that blessing for a girl, right? And the question is, why not? So like you alluded to, it should be the same thing, right? If the girl is now obligated, now she has like we said, the mental wherewithal, the psychological ability to take on mitzvot and to take on promises and have sign legally binding contracts, right? She's no longer a minor by Jewish law. So if that's the case, the father should make the bracha for her too, and he doesn't. So why not? So there's it's sort of a difficult, not difficult, but it's sort of an involved discussion, and it'll have to do with next week's topic of bar mitzvah. But really, when we're saying that the father is exempt, what we're really talking about is the boy has his own obligation now to learn Torah, which is why we don't just make the bracha at any point. We don't just say it in the morning. We don't just say it on the boy's birthday. We say it when the boy gets his first aliyah. Because when he has his aliyah, the father says, at this point, from now on, whatever Torah he learns is completely his. I'm not responsible for it anymore. He's legally no longer responsible for the Torah that his son learns. Yes, obviously he should still pay tuition, should still support him, but there's already going to be questions in halacha about whether he can use his maser money for that, because he's really no longer obligated to do the mitzvah of chinuch, which we talked about in the last class. The same does not hold true for girls, because girls, although they are obligated in learning Torah, they're not obligated in learning Torah on the same level, and so therefore you don't make the bracha for them, because the learning that they do is still connected to the parents. Okay, so that's on that topic. The book, To Be a Jewish Woman, writes, Lisa Aiken writes, by the time children reach the age of 12 or 13, they have learned the rudiments of how to be Jewish women or men. The rites of Bat and Bar Mitzvah teach adolescents that they are mature enough to make adult decisions and to be responsible for the consequences of their behavior. At the very time when their desire to assert their independence from their parents emerges, like psychologically, that's naturally when people want to be independent, and that's good, right? That's part of a psychological development. Judaism gives them a framework within which they can do so without destroying themselves or the world around them. The Jewish rites of passage reinforce to budding adolescents that they are no longer allowed to let their emotions run their lives. They must take into account how their behavior will affect not only themselves, but the world as well. This is especially important once their newfound sexual and rebellious feelings can easily drive them to act in destructive ways. Unfortunately, the original meaning of these rites of passage has frequently become obscured by the lavishness of the parties or meals celebrating them. The real significance of a girl attaining the age of 12 years and a day and a boy attaining the age of 13 years and a day, by the way, that's one of the opinions about when bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah happen. It's 13 and a day or 12 and a day. That's not necessarily how we hold in halacha, but that's what she writes, is that they are now obligated to observe the commandments of the Torah, as we've said. For centuries in Europe, these events were commemorated by modest meals, usually at home. And then she goes on to say, in the United States, bar and bat mitzvah parties are often gala celebrations whose religious significance is minimal. Instead of lavishing so much time and money on the parties and meals, people should reconsider the true meaning of becoming a bar or bar mitzvah once transition into a responsible Jewish adulthood. While boys should acknowledge this by beginning to put on tefillin and by being called up to the Torah, girls can acknowledge this by preparing a talk about a specific area of Jewish observance that they can now pursue in earnest. Alternatively, they might prefer to study some aspect of Judaism that is not being taught in school, or commit themselves to doing kind acts for others. For example, some young women start visiting patients in a local hospital or nursing home in a weekly basis, or help new mothers when they return from the hospital. Others start saying Tehillim on a regular basis, or dedicate themselves to praying more intensely. The possibilities are endless. Yeah, so like I said, a bat mitzvah does not be a thing. It can be a very beautiful, powerful thing. And that's, again, according to the opinions that there should be a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, bat mitzvah. And one of the opinions that says that you should have a bat mitzvah. So we talked about emotion, we sort of worked our way towards the Yabia Omer. Yabia Omer, written by the Chacham Ovadia Yosef. So he writes that a bat mitzvah should happen. You should make a party out of it, and it should be a public party. So it's sort of interesting because most of the observant Sephardim that I know are usually much more careful about modesty, it seems, especially for girls. And it could be a cultural thing, it could be a historical thing. I'm not going to get into it. Either way, there's nothing wrong with it. But they often do not, as far as I know, not everybody has a bat mitzvah. But it seems that many Sephardic poskim say you should have a bat mitzvah, which makes sense. One of the things that the Yabia Omer writes there is that even if you don't have a major to do about it, you should have a party as you would for any birthday. Any birthday, and that's why we started talking about birthdays in the beginning, because according to many Sephardic opinions, birthdays are celebrated and should be celebrated every single year. The Ben Ish Chai writes in his halachot, Parshat Re'eh, he writes, first of all, aside from the major birthdays that he very much encourages people to celebrate, their 60th birthday, their 70th birthday, etc., he also writes that that people should celebrate their birthday every year, and one of the ways to do it is to eat a fruit that would require shechianu, and when they're saying the shechianu, to have in mind the shechianu of their birth, right? That they have been brought to this year, to this place, that they've been able to survive this long. The Gemara mentions that there's an opinion that there's an opinion that there's a punishment called karet, which could also mean early death. And early death means before the age of 60. And people should celebrate when they get to the age of 60, because what it means by definition is that they were not obligated to this punishment of karet, of excision. So that's wonderful, right? It's something to celebrate. So that's for sure. But he says, really, you should celebrate. It says every year. And so it says the Yabia Omer, so a bat mitzvah should be no less a celebration, for sure. The birthday, for sure, right? And we should celebrate the fact that this girl is taking on mitzvot. Now, a book that most of you are probably not familiar with, it's something called a madrich. Right? A madrich is a sort of a cheat book for rabbis. Right? It has what to say at funerals, what to say at under the chuppah. That's right. So the Rabbinical Council of America, the RCA, has a madrich, life cycle. They call it life cycle madrich, and in it there is a chapter for bat mitzvah. There are things that they recommend people say. There's no real ceremony to bat mitzvah, and therefore they say there are a number of potential ingredients which can combine for a meaningful ceremony. They give some suggestions to make, but there's a host of possibilities, including saying Tehillim, saying Kuf Chaf Aleph, Shir Lamalot, saying Kuf Chaf Bet, Shir Hamalot again. And so saying Kuf Chaf Vav, again, the congregation should say it together, or the rabbi reads it, or the Bat Mitzvah girl, whatever. Everybody should say Shema Yisrael together. Why Shema Yisrael? Because what's Shema Yisrael? It's us taking on the Ol of Torah, taking on the responsibilities of mitzvot, and that's what a bat mitzvah should be. So saying Shema, the parents giving her the bracha of Yisamech Elokim, Tzarifka Rachav Aleya, which some people do every week anyway. Some people do it once a year right before Yom Kippur. Either way, the longer bracha of the Hi Ratzon that's usually said at Erev Yom Kippur is in this madrich as well, and singing Siman Tov and Mazel Tov, etc. There's in other words, it's become very, very well accepted that we do celebrate Bat Mitzvah today, even in Orthodox communities. So it's definitely, it can be done in a modest way that does not encourage pursuit of immodesty. But there's another interesting way that you can look at the whole idea of, well, we're copying the other groups, right? We still have the problem of still going in their ways, right? We're just we're modifying it, we're making it a little more modest. But isn't it really just a debutante ball? So or a reformed Bat Mitzvah? So how are we allowed to do it? So it's an interesting little knitch, is that when do we do it? When is a girl Bat Mitzvah? As we mentioned before, according to Chazal, it's when she's turning 12. So for sure, it's not like other people, because even the other groups who have Bat Mitzvahs and who might have even started the custom of celebrating Bat Mitzvahs in earnest, they celebrate it when the girl is 13. Who knows why? Because girls and boys are equal. They're all the same thing. Doesn't matter. Or whatever they think. I don't know. But certainly we do it when a girl is 12, because we believe that Chazal tell us that a girl matures faster, physically, mentally, psychologically, intellectually, etc., etc. So for all those reasons, we have reason to celebrate. The Zohar tells us in Bereshit that Shimon Bar Yochai, right, the great Shimon Bar Yochai, made a party for his son Eliezer when he turned 13. That's one of our sources for having a bar mitzvah to begin with. And we know that they lived in difficult times. We live in difficult times too. We need to have celebrations. We need to have reasons for simcha. And it's not just, it's not like the Gentile idea of a birthday, we're like celebrating the person, right? We're celebrating that the person is where they are, and that hopefully they're taking upon themselves to do good things and better and more growth. Go aliyah to continue growing and doing good things. And so we definitely want that for our boys, and we certainly want that for our girls. So that's why, according to almost every opinion, almost every community you'll find today, there is some way to celebrate the Bat Mitzvah, and that should only continue, and we should only see simchas.
Amen.
All right, I'm going to stop the live feed to Facebook and the recording so that we can ask any questions we might have. If there are any good questions, I'll try to remember them to repeat them next week.
No, I have a comment though, no question.